Hey, kia ora team, JT here. And yeah, as Kyle said in his email, we ran well over time the other night. And one of our goals was to really get into identifying where this interference could be. And so this video is about the three areas that interference is created. And hopefully that's going to give you more of an insight into your own interference. And then the next video is around how we can then remove that so you can perform to your potential. Right, let me get this click going. All right, quick recap. So why is this important around removing interference? It's because we talked about those three parts of the brain, and to operate under intense pressure, we need to be functioning in our driver's brain. Top 2 inches in sport, we all know that. Same in life. You as coaches, us as people want to be operating in that space. But we've got this ancient old operating system that is there to protect us. You know, there's no dinosaurs anymore, but there are people out there that say sad things, who also might physically do things. And so to protect us, our brain still has this function. And that means we then don't have access to the driver's brain, and we operate out of our emotional Hulk brain and Rambo brain. Now, where we really want to get to, as mentioned, is operating out of our driver's brain. So we need to remove the interference that causes us to get into stress response quickly so that we can operate in our potential in our driver's brain so we can have a better performance. Okay, so first place we touched on briefly around where interference is created is through relationships. And we talked about this marshmallow test. And it's an amazing stat when you look at it. You know, only 1/3 could delay gratification. And then 30 years later, when they went to visit those 1/3 that could delay gratification, they found that there was this massive difference between life markers, you know, around jobs, income, wealth, and success. And so they delved back into the 2/3 that couldn't delay gratification. And what they found was one of the main reasons was because of this broken promises, agreements, or expectations. All right. And where this came real for me was my daughter's example around her scooter. Okay. So I heard about this broken agreement. I was like, oh, okay. Did a bit more reading and then took that philosophy, okay, if there's a broken agreement with someone which is causing them not to perform to their potential, then let's get to the bottom of that. Let's find out what that broken agreement was. And so with my daughter, you know, her behavior at the time is when she was with anyone else, you'd drop her off with friends or family to be looked after. You'd come back, and as soon as I'd enter the room, she would, you know, be whiny, moany, groany tantrum, okay? And then you'd ask auntie or uncle who they've been with, and they'd be like, she's been great. Okay, so why can her behaviour and potential be at this end of the scale when I'm not there, and then all of a sudden change? And so in this instance, when she was tantruming for the scooter, and I actually got down, and instead of just chucking her off to her room, which I traditionally would do just to keep them quiet, as I sat down and decided, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's get to the core. And so what we discovered is, she said, because you broke it, and so you didn't fix it and you threw it away. And 18 months earlier, there was in a situation where I said I'd fix her scooter, and I didn't. And I ended up throwing it away without even telling her. And to cover it up, I said to her, oh, let's go to the pool where your best friend will be. And at the time she was like, okay, cool, and started trotting off. And at that moment I thought, she's forgotten about it. She's going to forget it. But little did I know she hadn't. 18 months. You know, she was just 5 at the time. At 18 months, she still remembered. And then at that point, all these other times that I said we would do something and it didn't happen, started popping up. In this supermarket playground one was a frequent one, you know. And what hit me was that, in my view, it wasn't my fault that we couldn't go to the playground. We'd come out of the supermarket, it'd be raining, and then I'd say, we can't go. It's not my fault. But I had said earlier that we would go. And so in her eyes, and in anyone's eyes, we've all been in those situations, that we've had a broken agreement, broken promise. And so she started to learn this behavior that Papa, which is me, wouldn't do what he said. And so to be heard, I'm going to act in a certain way. And this is the behavior that was hardwired into her, and it became just like your phone has an operating system. That's how we operate. That's how she operated. And I really needed to get down and identify that interference and remove it, because this was not her true potential. It wasn't her real performance. We knew that by feedback from others. And so once we removed it, there's this dramatic improvement in behavior. And not saying that there's never tantrums, but dramatic improvement in how she behaves around me once we address that broken promise. So what does this mean for you? And what we're going to do is, as a sheet at the end that you're going to work through, and you're going to identify relationships in your life, and you're going to go, okay, what was the event? What did you think? How did you feel? Then what was your response? And after that, what was your belief that was created from that sequence of events? Because if that's my 5-year-old's behavior due to a broken promise, what is your behavior towards someone who's broken a promise or an agreement with you? What's that been? And this is going to help us identify that. You could also go into what promises have you broken with others and agreements, and then also say, hey, how are they behaving? Okay, and this can be positive or negative relationships and behaviors. So the positive ones, what was the event? What did you think? What was your emotions? How did you respond? Now, what's your belief around that person? All those situations. Okay, so you'll get that sheet at the end. Second place where we create or interference is created is around environments. And I was doing a chat with parents, and I did it online, and a friend from South Africa was tuning in, and at the end of it he said, JT, that was cool, learned some great stuff. Hey, have you seen this guy talk? And this is Simon Sinek, a well-known author, speaker around leadership, management, and a lot of TED Talks. And it was a link to one of his talks around safe environments. And what intrigued him the most around performance was that the story of an American soldier who, under intense fire, as we usually hear around these medals that have been awarded to people, under intense fire from the enemy, he went out and saved a whole lot of people, dragged them towards the helicopter, then turned around and went back and got more. And the last one, he gave a kiss on the forehead, put him in the helicopter, and then went back out to find some more, I think. And he was watching this clip because it was caught on camera on a GoPro, and he started thinking, where does that performance come from? Why does someone act like that? And so he interviewed all these officers who had won medals in war, and they all came back with the same response. Why did you do it? He asked. They all said, because they would have done it for me. And then he started thinking, well, where does that thought come from? Where does that belief come from? How do you know they would have done it for you? And you can click on his talk by clicking on his picture there. But what he talked about was this circle of safety. And again, he goes back to the caveman days, the early days, where there was all this danger around us, the environment, the dinosaurs, everything was out to get you. And as we evolved as Homo sapiens, he talks about we became more social. And so we came together as tribes, as communities. And we worked together to look after ourselves, to protect ourselves from the danger. And so some of us would stay up at night so that we would protect those that sleep. And when we build that trust, we then build cooperation, teamwork. But trust is this feeling. So you can't just say, trust each other. That just doesn't work. And he talks about that in his video clip. But when you create a safe environment, magic things happen. They start to work together and utilize each other's strengths naturally. And in this safe environment, people operate in their potential. And quite often, you would have seen this in your teams or even in your workspaces where you've got a good environment, is they exceed expectations and they exceed potential. And that's really crucial. And he gave an analogy or a story of how effective this can be in business. We know how our environment can be in sport. We see that. This company here, NextJump, the founder created this policy that you can't get fired. In a place where performance in corporate America, performance is key, you're out of there, the next one's in. If you're not good enough, he said no one could get fired. We're going to coach you along the way like one of our kids. We treat you as family. We're not going to ditch you on the pile if you don't perform. We're going to support you and grow you. And how safe would you feel as an employee around that point? You know, and they're doing amazing things. Another example is this guy, Bob Chapman, CEO of his company. They had to slash like $2 million off their bottom line, something like that. And again, in traditional corporate America, you have job cuts. And you know what it's like if you've been in a restructure or even in a selection with teams where you're cut from the squad altogether. You're sitting there in camp and you get cut. In a restructure, you're thinking, wow, I survived that one. When's the next one? Am I safe? And in this space of being unsafe, we protect ourselves. We go into our emotional brain, our Hulk brain. But Bob's philosophy was, okay, instead of cutting jobs, everyone is going to suffer a little. And so therefore, everyone had to take an extra, I think it was 2 weeks leave. Rather than cutting half of the people out, rather than having a small amount suffer massively, we're all going to suffer a little. And he created that circle of safety. And what happened was amazing. People who could take an extra 4 weeks leave because of whatever their financial situations were started to grab other people's 2 weeks that they needed to take. And they started to collaborate. They started to work together. They started to use each other's strengths, all because there was this safe environment. We weren't having to operate in our Hulk brain. We didn't have to Rambo. We didn't have to survive. We were safe. And so they were operating in their driver's brain and started to strategically think, rationally think, all these key skills that need to happen under pressure. And the key result is they actually saved $4 million off their bottom line. Something ridiculous like that. And so the effect of a safe environment is so crucial. And if we look at, we mentioned kids who come from not so safe homes, you know, what brain are they operating out of? If they come from a violent home and they see violence, then their brain is in Rambo mode. No, protect myself. So I'm going to get physical. All right? Well, I'm going to get loud. And so when we rock up to school, or they rock up to school, we're already in Rambo mode. And a teacher says to us that we've got the wrong gear on, or I'm not wearing the right shoes, or I spat on the ground because I haven't eaten for the morning, whatever. That's a threat, and so I'm going to protect myself, and I'm going to respond with my Hulk brain, Rambo brain. And the picture there of my brother and I doing surf lifesaving with a friend who we can't name at this stage, I really want to share his story, is he talks vividly of going into college, and at year 9, all he remembers was people wanted to fight. And go back a step, at primary school, he was bullied. And so he thought, okay, sheepers, that is going to be different at college. Got into college, it was exactly the same. And he remembers the day that he thought, okay, this is how life is. Well, I'm going to respond. And he became the aggressor. He became the violent one. You know, Pākehā boy going out for fights. So bad that his dad dragged him out of the school he was in into another one. And again, he became this aggressor. He was a product of the environment that he grew up in. We've all heard that saying before. And now he's a totally changed man. He's operating well in his driver's brain. He owns a couple of businesses. His life markers, if you measure success in those specs, wealth, income, relationships, all of those things are, above average. And he looks back at that and wonders why he was operating in that space, because a product of our environment. So, interference can be created in your environments. Where are they? At your workplace, home, socializing spaces. What effects does this environment have? What do you notice, and how do you then respond to what's in there? In-house politics is a big one. How does that cause you to behave? Gossiping is a massive one. How does that cause you to behave? So you're going to analyze your environments. What's the event that comes to your mind? What were your thoughts? What was your emotions? What was your response to that event? And then what belief was created from that? List down all the events and instances that come to your mind around several environments. Home, like I said, home, work, sport. Whatever, positive and negative. These events are shaping our lives and shaping our beliefs. All right, third and last place that we can create interference is with ourselves. And I was in another Super Rugby coaches workshop, and very lucky, just again sitting in the back of the room doing teas and coffees, and this guy from the Arbinger Institute started talking about this self-deception concept. And I was really intrigued, and the other super coaches that were there started asking questions and saying, so how does this actually work? Self-deception. And the best way I can explain it is talk you through a scenario. So the way I saw my life at that time when I came across this concept, I was at a regional job which required a lot of travel around the lower North Island. My darling was able to be at home if she wanted to, and we wanted that to look after the kids. So I travelled a lot, but I was also able to work from home when I could. And then kids came along, and the old waking in the night disruptions, etc. And so early on in my head, when the baby cried, and initially, one instance I remember, but it was also a couple of times this happened, is I wanted to get up and help. That was my first reaction. But then as quick as that, the next thought was, hang on, hold on. I'm working busy days here. I just got back late last night. I've got a full day today. No, she can do it. It's her job. And so I lay in bed, and the baby kept crying. She didn't move. And I thought, man, come on. You know I just got in late. You know I've got a busy day tomorrow. I earn for this family. You need to get up. And so she got up and attended to the baby. And so this is what happens in this process. When I had that first thought, I could get up and honor that thought, get up, dress the baby. Or I can dishonor it, which I did, and I stayed in bed. And the intriguing thing is, once you dishonor it, our brain starts to justify our decision. So it says, I'm a hardworking husband. This is not fair. She can be at home, so she can get up. I'm the victim because I've got this busy day ahead tomorrow, and I've been busy. And I've been working heaps and heaps of hours, travel. So our brain start to justify that decision of dishonoring it. And it blows these decisions up massively. Why? Because its function is to protect us. I've made a decision. I'm going to protect that decision and myself and my decision by blowing up my justifications. Then what it starts to do, this is the freaky part, is we start to collect evidence against the other person. And I start to see her as a lazy wife, selfish because she didn't get up and she knows that I've got a busy day. And I know you females out there are starting to cringe as I go through this process. but I have changed my behavior. But at the time, this is what I was thinking. I was thinking, she's unappreciative of me. You know, she knows I'm out on the road working hard. Those are the thoughts I start to see of her, and then I collect massive evidence to support that story. And when I get up out of bed in the morning, they're still asleep, obviously, and I go into the shower. And all I see is these clothes of hers and babies on the floor. And I think, oh, gosh, see, look, she's left that for me to pick up and put in the laundry. Collecting evidence. Then I go into the kitchen to do my breakfast and I see the dishes are all still not done from yesterday. Oh, look, see, she's lazy. She's leaving them for me to do. And I collect this massive evidence against the other person. And then at the same time, I keep blowing up my justifications. This view of the situation is not accurate at all. My darling could not be the most hardworking wife and mum out there. She, in our first child, she went and studied full time, and one of her exams she had to sit through because she had morning sickness. She's done 3 degrees. She's moved a relocatable house. She's the most determined, committed human being that I know. So these thoughts and evidence couldn't be further from the truth. And it happened again with an old boss. You know, he had communication, organisation, planning and meetings. They were quite poor. And my first thought was I should help him. But I just started in a role and I was like, nah, he's the boss. He gets paid for this. He's been around longer. He should be able to do this job. Not my job. And I started collecting more and more evidence around how hopeless he was, around how inefficient he was, started to justify, no, I'm just new. No, not my problem. And so I didn't have clarity of thought. I wasn't operating in the F1 driver's brain, that's for sure. I was going round and round in the emotional brain, and it affected my performance, and it affects your performance. So the reality you think is reality is a question mark. What I found is I was looking at, I was like I had these, these flash new goggles on, and I was in my own story, walking through life with my goggles on. Meanwhile, reality was happening outside it. My wife wasn't lazy. She wasn't inconsiderate. And we gather this proof to support our story. And we create this story, which is then a belief about that person. And that's the dangerous part. Now, self-betrayal causes this massive interference right in front of our eyes. And if we, over time, we rerun that story, that story of me in bed not getting up and her being inconsiderate, we rerun that over 25 years. Imagine the story and the belief that couples build up about each other, or the stories that you have about other people. And so those stories become your beliefs. What brain are we operating in then? Are we actually thinking rationally at all? And in my instance, I don't have time to go into now, but my 14 years relationship with my darling was the story I had in my head of Rambo coming to save her, and that she needed to listen to me and we would do whatever I would say, was complete and utter just rubbish. Anyway, so you're going to identify people you've self-betrayed against. So who have you had a thought to help, or, this initial first thought, but then you went against it? And you can obviously start with your partners first. That's usually the easiest. Then you can move to your work colleagues or athletes, etc. Again, what was the event? Were you lying in bed and the baby cried? What was your thought? What was your emotion? What was your response? And now what's the story that you've started to build around that person and you and their relationship? What justifications are you saying? Yeah, I'm busy, I'm hardworking. And then what evidence are you collecting around that person? Now, I know what some of you are saying is, hey, what if I don't have this thought or feeling to start with? Like, you know, I look at that new work colleague and I don't have a feeling. I just know that he's a dick. Well, this concept is what Arbinger Institute call of being in the box. And what has then happened once we're in the box is our beliefs are now leading our response. Okay. So based on the stories that run through your head, they are now so strong that they don't cause you to have any thoughts or feelings. You just know that that's the response. There's that belief. This is the response I need to have. And so when we see this pile of sugar, as kids, remember, we used to think, yum. There's the event. Mum's putting the sugar on the table, or this white stuff at this point. Thoughts are, when we're young, I'm going to give that a, maybe go and try that out. My emotion, I'm curious. The response is I grab it and eat it. The belief or story in my head is like, oh, that tastes nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. And so repeat develops the story, and it becomes so strong that your stories then drive your thoughts and emotions automatically. It's really quick, and you go straight to the response. There's the white stuff. It's sugar. I'm going to grab it. That's my response. Oh, shit, it's bloody salt. It's not what you expected. And so this is the operating system, or sorry, this is the way of being we now become as adults. We don't experiment, or we struggle to experiment things anymore. There's an event. Should we go and see what that's like? I'm curious. Oh, actually, there's my response. No, we're not going to do that. Whereas now, because we're adults, we've got these beliefs. Don't go swimming in that ocean because there's sharks. Instead of, there's an event, let's go and test it out and then find out beliefs. Not saying you should swim with sharks, but your beliefs are driving how you be. And those beliefs are based on old stories that may not be true, is the point we're trying to make, in particular around people. Okay, and the story I need to end with on this that really hit home for me was we look at people, and based on the stories in our head, which are created from events in our past, we can make quick judgments. We can be judgmental. And the photo there on the bottom right of Lunni, who was a development officer in the Lower North Island that we used to work with. He was a twin, and he was a good rugby player. But then as he got older and started to do his work in the development officer space, started to get a big puku. And we did this trek up a hill, go hunting one time, and it was puku, it was so big, and he said, I'm going to do it. And he walked up, and my first response, seeing him, or my first thought, I was in the box. I saw him, saw his figure. I thought, oh, lazy. You know, finished his rugby career and now doesn't commit to any training. He then used to fall asleep in our workshops, lazy, started collecting evidence. And long story short, I had this picture of Lunni that he was a lazy, wasn't committed to his health, and wouldn't do the extra yards. That was the evidence I had built up. Couldn't be further from the truth. Those people that know him, the most caring person out there. And his puku, which started to get really big, ended up being a cancerous ulcer, and he died from that ulcer, and which was massive in his stomach. And it just hit me that how being in the box causes us to be so judgmental. We go straight to our beliefs, which is fueled by our own experience, but also media. Someone in that shape, big puku, must be lazy, uncommitted. And so being in the box towards others is what we want you to have a look at and investigate. So what's the event? What was your thoughts, feelings? What was your response towards them? Then what was your belief about that and about them? Right, so I think that's it with self-betrayal. Yeah, very powerful. Okay, so wrapping up. F1 driver's brain is where we can perform under intense pressure. We can perform to our potential. All right? But being in that brain is hindered by mental interference. Mental interference causes us to go into stress response quicker and easier. So whether it's in different parts of our life, if we're always going into stress response, we are building this map in our brains. The stress response map is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's like the repetition of any skill. You repeat it enough times, it becomes habit. And so what I'm trying to get across to you is that you might have a stress response over here in your personal life, over here in your work life, but not in your rugby coaching life, and you think you might have that mastered. But in fact, stress response in any part of your life drains your whole potential, prevents you from reaching or performing to your real potential. And it's like having the iPhone for the first time, and I wondered why my battery didn't last that long. And it wasn't until someone told me, JT, let me look at this. And he, flipped it up and he showed me all the apps and windows that I had open for the last 2-3 weeks were still open. And that was draining my battery life. And so that's the same with mental interference. Whether you've got it in one part of your life, some parts of your life, if you think that that doesn't affect where you're going in your coaching life, then I'm here to say I'm sorry. That's going to really affect how you stay in your driver's brain, because it's the same skill, whether you're at home, at work, or at play. All right, so hopefully that gives you a bit more awareness on where interference can be created. Get the template down and analyze your areas of life, your relationships, environment, and self. Jot that down, positive and negative ones, and have a look at where and how you respond to certain situations. And the next one's going to be about, now, how do we then remove that interference? Because identifying it's step 1, removing it's step 2. Alrighty, thanks heaps, JT out.